Hey, it's Drybear. The update this week approaches on Thursday, May 22nd, and they've done some more teasers today showing off some of the details of the Mutant Cell system, as well as some changes to the inspection system for looking at other players in the game. So we've got some TFD news to talk about. Also, to reiterate this, because it keeps coming up in my chat, yes, this Thursday we will be getting the Ice Maiden, a new Void Abyss boss, added into the game. And no, it will not be resetting your green ETA vouchers for that. You will still be able to buy the Tormentor skins as well as the Tormentor back attachment inside of the ETA vendor, and you won't lose your green vouchers for this. It'll just be a replacement of the existing boss. And then when Season 3 rolls around, that's when the vouchers will reset. So you don't have to worry about stockpiling those for Ice Maiden if you like. You can just keep continuing on as normal. It's just, we'll have a new Abyss boss coming in to replace. So the first news to talk about today is the teaser they dropped today, like this morning. It was kind of a shock. We weren't expecting this. We weren't thinking this was going to be anytime soon, but they dropped this morning as a teaser for the patch this week. So this is an inspect menu, which means that you'll be able to inspect other players and see their build. So you can see their cosmetics. You can like inspect them and see what skin they're running. You can look at all of their their spawn, their makeup, back attachments, their full skin setup, all of their hair dyes, their paint for their skin as well. So if you wanted to see exactly what they're running and what colors and everything, you can see that. You can also see their mastery level, and you can also look at their build. Now, at first glance, it seemed like this was just going to be, you can see their modules, but I was going to complain, actually, that it was not going to show as much. However, if you take a look in the background, you'll notice that this menu here, behind this pop-up on this mock-up here, is not actually the normal inventory screen. It has a giant Descendant view right here on the back. Then it has obviously no UI buttons for inversion reinforcement and Descendant modules and things like that. So that tells me that this is actually, the screen you see behind this pop-up here is actually the inspect screen. That would be my best guess, which means that you can inspect someone. It'll pop up with the normal inventory screen. It'll have the Descendant here in the top left. Likely you can click the Descendant and it'll bring up this menu here showing their 12 modules and what setup they have. And then it has their 3 weapons, and likely you can probably click on the weapons as well and see those modules there. Now, we don't know for sure if it'll have weapon cores as a display on that as well, or if it'll just be like the modules and that sort of thing. But at least you can see that there. And then on the right side, it has the usual external components and the reactor as well. So presumably you will be able to inspect a player and be able to see all of their weapons, all of their modules, all of their components and reactor, as well as their skin setup, their paint, and everything. Which is actually, when I first saw this, like, this is great, this is awesome. However, the community is kind of divided on this. You have some people memeing saying, can't wait to find out what absolute horrors some of you are running, and just kind of showing that. However, others say that this will cause a lot of toxicity in the game as well. So there will be elitists that will skim their squad mates just to justify leaving before the barrier comes down. So you can see what mods they're running. You can then like harass them because they're not running HP mods and they keep dying, that sort of thing. There are people saying that you're going to expect every single player, or people are going to just start gatekeeping because of it, and all of these are valid concerns. However, I would say that even with all of these individually, I would say that this is still a net boon for the game, because there are so many people that play the game now that say, what build should I run? And because the game is fluctuating in player base, it means there aren't as many theory crafters going out making builds and posting them as there used to be. So new players come in, or people that just want to get a build that they can use and they don't want to get into the muck and start theory crafting. This is going to allow people to say, like, hey, I joined a public matchmaking lobby. This giant big booba queen Serena flew by and deleted the entire galaxy. I would like to know what she's using to rewrite the rules of reality with her own powers. And you'll be able to do that with this new setup here. So I think this is going to be actually a good thing. But let me know what you think about this, if you are happy about this, excited about this, or a little bit concerned. Now, I guess if it really becomes a problem of griefing and toxicity and gatekeeping and stuff like that, maybe they can add a feature that allows you to toggle on incognito or something where other people can't see your build. I don't know. I feel like we're getting into some really squirrely, like, sociology situations of humanity here, where we're trying to keep our trade secrets of our Booba Smash build for Serena or whatever. And honestly, I personally feel like a lot of the builds in TFT end up being very similar because of the way the game design is constructed, that it doesn't feel like it really, the builds are like drastically different from each other. If you run a crit character, you get 4 crit mods. If you don't run a crit character, you run the non-crit mods. You need mana. If you need mana, you need, power as much as you can get, cooldown probably, and then you run the exact same stats on every external component in the entire build, which to me is also something I really hope they fix. I think external component stats, by the way, is one of the weakest areas in the entire game. I'm actually at a point now where you have 2 different setups for external component stats. One, if you're running a shield build, you need more shield recovery and max shield. Or 2, if you're not running a shield build, you run the exact same external component stat setup in every single build. You run HP, MP recovery out of combat on your auxiliary. You run double MP on your sensor. You run MP recovery and defense, or MP recovery and shield recovery on your memory. And then you run whatever you want on the processor, or you just run double shield, and if that's what you want to do. Mainly because the resistance in the game are pretty useless. They don't really do anything. Like, you don't really stack electric resistance. None of that really matters because that system has been faulty since launch. And because all of the external components are so hyper limited in what stats they can drop and how they affect your build, it just gets to the point where everything's almost identical when it comes to external components. So that's an example to me that of like, I don't really ever need to see if I'm like curious about a build, I don't need to see what your external component stats are, because you just don't. Like, it's either are you a shield build or are you an MP needer? That's it. That's all you need. So I don't know. I feel like there's definitely some concerns around griefing and gatekeeping and that sort of thing. But I also think it's very helpful for the people that want to get builds, they want to get information, they want to make new builds or try things out. Being able to inspect other players is going to be great. And the other thing that someone brought up in my chat as well is that hopefully with this, we can start getting inspects on the leaderboards. That's probably even more important. Like, if you're looking at the leader, like the whole point of a leaderboard in a build character-based game is to be able to say, okay, what are the top people running? Like, and I know we have that little like web integration that they have where you can see what the top modules are across everyone, but I think it would be really good if they have this inspect menu built in and functioning, that they just add that to the list of things that you can do on the leaderboard and say, hey, who's the #1 Jayber? What build is he running to be able to defy fate? Next, they showed a little bit more of the upcoming Mutant Cell system, and there's some cool things about this, and there's one concern that I have about this system, at least in concept. So on screen, you can see this is the system they've been talking about. They haven't really given us any details until today on how this system will work, but the idea is it is just like jewels slotting into the skill tree for Path of Exile. It is an inlay system where you can take a powered item and slot it into your arcade tuning board and gain benefits because of it. So on screen, you can see this is their mock-up for this overall. So you can actually see here. There's a whole bunch of mutant cells to collect. I don't even think they've mentioned where these come from, though you have to assume that they come from Sigma sector, because where else but Sigma would these drop in the current mode? It's not like we're getting new activity this Thursday. But you'll be farming these up, and it looks like they do have levels. Like, this one's 19, that one's 20, and they all have different effects on that as well. So you'll be able to put those in there. And then in the 4 corners of the arcade board is where you slot the mutant cells. So you slot these in, and if you go over to them with your arcade points and select it, you will gain the bonus. And as we saw on the first mock-up here, this one does, when you are attacking an enemy with burn, you get a skill power modifier. And this skill power modifier is a percentage with a plus on it, which means it'll just give you a nice little bonus there. And obviously, these actually have socket types as well based on it. However, getting to my one concern with this so far is that on this mock-up, you will notice on the left side of the screen that the RK factor hasn't changed, which means that in the game currently, we have level 40 unique RK factor, which means we get 40 points to spend on the board, with the yellow ones at the outset costing 5 total RK tuning. So if you wanted to do 1 RK, you have 35 points to spend. If you want to do 2 of the yellow quality, the ultimate quality, you will have 30, right? So those are pretty expensive. However, you'll notice that this number hasn't changed. And it takes, once you're here in the area, it takes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points to get to the mutant cell slot, which means that yes, the mutant cell slots are in the game. However, with the RK tuning and RK factor not getting higher, it means that we're now having to compete for those points even more. So yes, we're getting new power with the mutant cells and the slots that go along to it. However, it is coming along with a hefty opportunity cost, because now you can get to the mutant cell and activate it, but you're sacrificing points to get it, which means that you are trading power for power, which means that in some cases it may just be a side grade. In some cases it might be slightly better, but you now have to factor in the loss of what you gave up to get this power, not just the power itself. So I almost wish that they gave us, like, I don't know, like 5 more points on the RK factor, just to make sure that this was like an actual increase, not just a side grade. And some of these might be so good that they're super worth it, right? Like skill power, 9.5% is pretty decent, I guess. A nice little boon there, but you could also argue that the raw skill power you get over here on the right side of the tree could be relatively equivalent in a lot of cases, which means that it's one or the other, right? Which makes this kind of a less interesting choice, at least in my mind, but it could be that these get leveled up and become much, much stronger, and it is super worth it. But already you're going to have to make concessions on where you go on the board and where things are. And also because these are so entirely specific, like this is only when the target is affected by a debuff called burn do you get this bonus. It means that even if you're playing someone like Blair, for example, there will be periods where the target the burn falls off, or you haven't yet applied the burn, which means that you don't have perfect uptime on this skill power modifier. So because it's so conditional and you're sacrificing opportunity cost to get it with not 100% uptime, considering how conditional it is, this could end up being kind of like a, sometimes it's really good, sometimes it's just okay, sometimes it's a bit of a grief kind of situation, which, kind of kills the excitement for me a little bit, but we'll have to see once it comes in, and maybe these end up leveling up a lot more. Like this ends up becoming like 30% skill power, then you're like, okay, well maybe, all right, or like if this number gets higher and higher, that could very, very well change that perspective in general as well. So let me know what you think about the mutant cell system coming into the First Descendant. I also feel like we're kind of approaching the point in TFD where, I think that there needs to be some oversight a little bit on how we're handling the introduction of new power systems and how those power systems interact with each other, right? There's definitely been a growing sense of major power creep in TFD, right? With the weapon core system that blew the landscape out of the water. That was such a major shift in the paradigm of power in TFD, and then arcade tuning added to that. Now we're adding more to arcade tuning, and we're getting more and more powers. Are we just going to get to a point where we just keep eclipsing everything and getting stronger forever? And I hope that they're able to maintain that as well. There's also a kind of feast or famine situation going on as well. I think when we have systems that go into the game that apply equally to everyone, it's almost like the rich get richer, right? Like if you get a system that adds more skill power generically, that's going to make all the best characters better, and just they're going to keep being the best characters. Whereas if we were to get more specialized activities or content, that would help some of the lower characters shine a little bit more, depending on how they actually implement it. So we're chugging along, and I hope that they get to keep doing updates like this. Season 3 is on the way, and it looks really, really cool, and I think that a lot of people are excited about it. But let me know what you think about the mutation cells in the game, the expansion of the arcade tuning system, and probably most importantly, this new inspect feature that's causing everyone to go into a tizzy because their trade secrets are being leaked on a signal chat, and there's not really a whole lot they can do about it. And maybe they'll make some adjustments or not, but this one was kind of dropped on us today. If you found value in today's video, leave a like down below, leave a comment for the algorithm to help this video get seen by more people, and don't forget to check out my other channels for other content and other stuff and other things.